After the first year of seminary, I had a position for the summer in a Lutheran church in New Jersey. It was a lovely location. It was very near Barnegat Bay, and the family that I lived with, who graciously hosted me, had a house on the Metedeconk River, a kind of a stubby little river that ran into Barnegat Bay. And the father was into sailing, and he had two very small little sailboats, and he taught me how to sail, which I enjoyed very much. One sailing lesson, as we were coming back in toward the docks, and these are a small little boat, he suddenly came over to my side of the boat to capsize it. And I immediately leapt to the other side to balance it. And so he came over again and joined me so that our weight would capsize the boat. I immediately jumped to the other side and balanced the boat. And he began to see, we did this a couple times, and he's 45 and I'm 22, and I was going to win that game all day. So he stands up and he walks to the mast and he gets hold of the mast as high as he can, and he jumps off the boat and capsizes the boat. He wanted me to learn what to do when the boat capsizes. And maybe he didn't warn me, well, because he wanted to have fun with me is what I think he did. But also to kind of let that kind of panic there, that kind of out of nowhere, all of a sudden, boom, your boat's capsized. What do you do now? And he taught me. But what was so interesting was, without any conscious thought, my instinct: keep the boat afloat. Do everything you can do to keep the boat up. Stay out of the water. I can swim. The water was, I probably could have stood. I mean, there was no danger, but I don't get in the water. Stay in the boat. Keep the boat right. That instinct, which I think is really an instinct of self-preservation, that he kind of called out of me there. And that's what we do. We're human, and we create our lives, and we want things to be steady, and we want our lives to work and move nicely, and we don't want the boat to be rocked too badly, and if it does, we want to do everything we can to balance it again, and we don't want to capsize. And in today's gospel, John is showing us Jesus toward the end of his life, coming into what we call Holy Week. And Jesus has an awareness of what's going on. And he says, "Now my soul is troubled. And shall I pray, Father, save me from this hour? No." And I think John is giving us the Gethsemane moment that Hebrews talks about in the lesson today, which is with loud cries and tears, Jesus is asking, praying to the Father, save me from death, this death. And so that instinct that we see in Jesus' humanity, that we share with him, that he shares with us, is so powerful that he cries and prays, save me from this death. And then it actually says his prayer was heard. He was heard. But we know he was not spared that death. And as John is showing us Jesus in this time in his life when he's sorting through what's happening, he tells us that some Greeks come and they ask Philip, "We would like to see Jesus." And so I just speculate that maybe they were hearing about him and his teaching. Maybe they were hearing of the miracles and things that he did. They wanted to get closer, perhaps. They wanted to know more about him, have a chance to find out for themselves. about who he is and what he was saying and what he was doing. And the reply that John's Gospel gives to us, the reply of Jesus is, unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, it just remains a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And then he turns to his disciples and says, you must lose your life in this world. You must hate your life in this world if you're going to follow me. If we want to see Jesus, if we want to understand him, one thing we have to see is that he did not choose to keep his boat safe. He could have been an honored rabbi. He could have played his cards that way and had a big school of followers and been held in high esteem. And the Greeks could have come and kind of learned about the way he taught Torah. He could have avoided this death just simply by slipping away out of the back side of the Garden of Gethsemane. But no. If you want to see, understand, know me, if you want to see, know, understand the life that God gives, the life of God in a human person, if you want to know that, then you must fall. You must allow your life to be capsized if that's where it goes, if that's what the Father gives, that you might bear much fruit. It's not about keeping your boat safe. You're not the captain if you're talking about the life I'm talking about. God the Father is the master, and you're going where he asks, and you're doing what he asks, and you're seeking to be with him in his life. And you may capsize. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth, it just remains a single grain, sterile, unfruitful, self-contained. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And I think Jesus is not a masochist, and I don't think he's asking us to go looking for trouble. We don't have to. He's asking us to be, available to the working of God through us, and trust that wherever it takes us, even when it looks very, very bad to us. And it occurred to me that in this language, especially in John, of Father and Son, that God treats Jesus as a son, not a pet. God approaches us to be sons and daughters, not kind of coddled pets. And I'm all for pets and pet loving. That's great stuff. But that isn't how God relates to us. You know, that kind of take care of us and feed us and lead us safely by the leash and make sure we have our vaccination and enjoy us and all those nice things that are wonderful about pets. Clean up after us. And then people joke about how the pets really are training the masters, right? But that isn't how it works with us and God. And it wasn't how it worked with God and His Son, Jesus Christ. He wants Him to be His Son in the world. He calls us to be. We've been baptized into this destiny as sons and daughters. And He wants us to grow up to be His people, His family in this world, representing Him, engaging our communities for Him, being what He asks us to be, living His vision of human life. To get caught up in that, we can't sit on the shelf. We will rock boats. We very well may be capsized. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, it just remains a single grain. But if it dies, it doesn't have to be physical death. If it dies to my captaincy of my boat, that I might have a greater Lord, it bears much fruit. So, beloved, our Father calls to us today. He calls to us as sons and daughters to see Jesus, to walk with Him, to follow Him in this way, because He was heard in His cries. He was met by life. Thanks be to God.